This machine doesn't make sense at first glance. Big Muskie was so large it could hold 2 full-sized buses in its mouth, and even today, standing next to what remains of it breaks your sense of scale. Numbers stop helping. Perspective fails. And once you realize how big this machine truly was, you start asking a much bigger question. Why did anyone ever build something this enormous? 7. But real quick, if you're into massive machines and engineering that shouldn't exist, hit that subscribe button. We've got so much more coming your way. Let's start by understanding the sheer scale of this machine. Big Muskie weighed 27 million pounds. That's 13.5 thousand tons. To move that kind of weight, you'd need about 9,000 cars. But here's where it gets wild. This thing stood 22 stories tall. Imagine a building. Now imagine that building moving. That's Big Muskie. The boom, that massive arm reaching out, was 310 feet long. That's longer than a football field. And at the end of that arm hung a bucket. Not a bucket like you're thinking. This bucket could scoop up 220 cubic yards of earth in one bite. To picture that, imagine scooping up enough dirt to fill 60 dump trucks. In one go. The bucket alone weighed 230 tons when it was empty. When Big Muskie wanted to grab something, it used cables that were 5 inches thick. And it needed them that thick because this machine was lifting weight that would snap anything smaller like a rubber band. The width of this machine was 151 feet. When you see old photos of Big Muskie, there are people standing next to it and they look like ants. Not exaggerating. And here's the twist. This massive machine had a crew of just 5 people. 5 humans controlling something that weighed as much as a small building and could reshape entire valleys. So how does something this massive even function? Big Muskie was a dragline excavator. Here's how it worked in the simplest way possible. You've got the boom sticking out with the bucket hanging from cables. The machine would swing the boom over the area it wanted to dig, drop the bucket, then drag it back toward itself. Hence, dragline. But the genius wasn't just in the digging. It was while walking. Yeah, this machine walked. Not on tracks like a tank, not on wheels, but on feet. 2 massive hydraulic feet that it would shift its weight onto, lift itself up, push forward, then set back down. Over and over. Big Muskie ran on electricity, not diesel. It was connected by a massive trailing cable that fed it 13,800 volts. When it was working, it used enough electricity to power 27,500 homes. Quick thing, if this is blowing your mind like it's blowing mine, drop a like on this video. It actually helps more people discover these insane machines. Okay, back to it. The power bill alone was tens of thousands of dollars per hour. So they ran it mostly at night when electricity was cheaper. Imagine getting a call from the power company because your machine is causing voltage drops across half of Ohio. The whole system was electric motors. 18 motors at 1,000 horsepower each, plus 10 more at 625 horsepower. This was a machine that needed its own power grid just to exist. And when it needed to move to a new spot, which wasn't often because of how slow it was, they had to build a special roadway made of heavy wooden beams. Without that, Big Muskie would just sink into the ground under its own weight. The preparation alone to move this thing a few hundred yards was a multi-day operation. Now here's something people don't get. Big Muskie wasn't built because someone wanted to build something huge. It was built because it was the only machine that made economic sense for a very specific problem. Strip mining for coal in Ohio needed to move massive amounts of dirt called overburden, the stuff sitting on top of the coal seams. We're talking hundreds of feet of rock and soil. You need that gone before you can even touch the coal underneath. In the late 1960s, coal was king. Energy demand was exploding. Oil prices were unstable. And high-sulfur coal, which Ohio had plenty of, was still totally legal to burn. The economics lined up perfectly. Building Big Muskie cost $25 million in 1969. That's over $200 million in today's money. But if you're moving enough earth fast enough, that cost gets justified real quick. And Big Muskie moved earth. Over its 22 years of operation, It removed more than 600 million cubic yards of overburden. That's twice the amount of dirt moved during the construction of the Panama Canal. But here's what people miss. Big Muskie only worked because everything aligned. Fuel prices had to stay high. Regulations had to stay loose. Demand had to stay steady. Land had to be available. The second any one of those factors shifted, the machine became a liability. And that's exactly what happened. In 1977, Clean Air Act gets passed. At first, it doesn't kill Big Muskie, but it starts a countdown clock. High-sulfur coal, the kind Big Muskie was digging up, suddenly became a problem. Power plants burning it had to install expensive scrubbers to clean the emissions. A lot of them just switched to low-sulfur coal from Wyoming instead. Way cheaper. Then 1990 hits, and the Clean Air Act gets amendments that make it even stricter. Now high-sulfur coal isn't just expensive. It's borderline uneconomical. Demand for Ohio coal goes down. Power costs keep climbing, and every year, Big Muskie gets more expensive to run while the coal it's uncovering becomes less valuable. In 1991, they shut Big Muskie down. Not because it broke, not because it wore out, because the world changed. The machine didn't fail. The economics did. And that's the gut punch of this whole story. Big Muskie worked perfectly. It did exactly what it was designed to do, better than almost anything else could. But it was built for a world that no longer existed. For 8 years, Big Muskie just sat there. This colossal monument to industrial ambition, rusting in an Ohio field. They tried to sell it. Nobody wanted it. The cost to dismantle, transport, and rebuild something that size was astronomical. And by the 90s, coal companies that were still strip mining had moved to smaller, newer machines that cost way less to operate. The only place that might have made sense for Big Muskie was Germany, at the Garzweiler mine. But even they didn't want it. They had bucket wheel excavators that could move twice as much dirt per day with less power. Big Muskie was already obsolete. Then, in 1999, Ohio and the EPA started enforcing the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. All equipment had to be removed from old strip mines so the land could be restored. Delays meant millions in fines. So they made the call to scrap it. People tried to save it. Enthusiasts, historians, engineers, they all said Big Muskie should be turned into a museum. But moving Big Muskie would have cost millions. Keeping it where it was would have cost millions in fines. In May of 1999, Big Muskie was dismantled and sold for parts. The only piece that survived was the bucket. That massive 230-ton bucket. They moved it to Miners Memorial Park in Ohio, where it still sits today. There's an information center there now telling the story of the Central Ohio Coal Company and honoring the miners who worked those sites. The land Big Muskie tore apart has been reclaimed. 10,000 acres of stripped earth became the Wilds, a wildlife preserve that opened in 1994. African animals, Asian species, North American fauna, all living on land that used to be a massive coal operation. You can visit it today. You can stand next to that bucket and try to wrap your head around the machine it came from. And if you drive out to the wilds, you can see zebras and giraffes grazing on hills that Big Muskie carved out. The contrast is absolutely wild. This is not just a story about a big machine. It's a story about how we build things for the world as it is, not the world as it's becoming. Big Muskie made perfect sense in 1969. By 1991, it was a relic. The machine wasn't too big to work. It was too big to survive a changing world. And maybe there's something quietly unsettling about that. We put 2 years and $25 million into building something so powerful it could move mountains, and 30 years later, it was turned into scrap metal. All that's left is a bucket in a field and some wild animals roaming the valleys it created. Do you think they should have preserved Big Muskie, or was scrapping it the right call? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this dive into industrial history, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We've got more videos coming on machines that push the absolute limits of what's possible. By the way, if you haven't seen our video on the industrial giants that work 24/7, you've got to check it out after this. Because just like Big Muskie, there are multiple other machines whose size is hard to comprehend.